So I painted Demigod of Apollo, and I feel like talking about my dog Apollo. Greetings, and welcome to Mediocre Minis. I decided once again to paint a thing and talk about it. This time we are talking about this miniature right here. This is the Demigod of Apollo from Crocodile Games, more specifically their game War Gods of Olympus. I picked up the Demigod of Apollo for two reasons. One, it's a cool mini, and cool minis deserve to be painted. And two, my dog, his name is Apollo. So this is mostly an excuse to not only paint a mini, but to show off pictures of my dog. Okay, let's jump right into it and start talking about this miniature and all the things that went into the painting job. As I mentioned in my previous I Painted a Thing video, I feel that every mini has a story to tell and something to say. With the Athena model, for instance, it was tales about white cloth and skin and how to overcome some challenges of things not looking the way I wanted to. Now, Demigod of Apollo, we didn't have to worry about white cloth, but there is something that I did learn, and something very important to learn from this miniature, is that it's totally okay to completely repaint something. It's totally okay to repaint something a second time or a third time, as long as you eventually make up your mind. We'll get into that, but most of this miniature was repainted several times as the project evolved, things changed, and it turns out sometimes you don't like what you've done and you want to redo it. So we're going to take a look at that, and first thing is the skin. The skin gave me one heck of a time because I just wasn't happy for the longest time. So I figured, well, let's take a look at this and see what the skin has to say. Now, the skin I started off very simply, very similar in the way that I did the skin for the Athena model. I wanted to have a more, again, golden or olive or that style of skin because, again, these are Greek heroes after all. And I started it and I didn't like it. In fact, I didn't really like much of it at all. So I said, okay, you know what? For now, it's fine. I'll keep it there. Let me work on something else. So I actually worked on the other arm. More specifically, I worked on the sword arm. And this time I said, well, let's go darker. I have several darker skin tone paints on my desk. Let's give them a go and see how they work. And it turned out that looking at this, the darker tone worked overall. I kind of liked it a bit more, at least at first. I liked it more than the weird pale that I was getting with the golden skin. The good news is, and this is one of the main things that I learned while doing this, is it really is just paint. I know I've said it many times before, and I'm probably going to say it more times in the future, but it's just paint. You can go right over it. So starting with what we're going to call the sword arm and the work I did on it, I just kept progressing with that, starting off with a dark flesh tone from Pro Acryl paints, moving then to their shadow flesh, and then eventually their brightened shadow flesh, using many thin layers going from these dark recesses all the way up to these bright highlights. It did take a lot of time. I'm not going to lie. These were very thin layers of paint, that it would take several layers to really build up opacity. And I did this because I had the time and I wanted to spend the time to see, would this work? Is this a viable way to paint skin? And I would say, yeah. Again, it took a long time, but that's fine. This is fun, and miniature painting is fun after all, right? We have many thin coats over time to slowly build up all of these layers. And I was able to add in a little bit of brown into the darkened flesh as well to darken up just a little bit more for some of the deepest of recesses, and add in a small amount of off-white to the brightened flesh towards the end for some of the sharpest and brightest of highlights for the skin. So that was definitely one of the big stories that this miniature had to tell, is one, you can just redo the skin if you don't like it. If it doesn't look good, it doesn't look good. Just fix it. Two, you actually can repaint things, and taking my own advice. And three, sometimes with just a little bit of patience and many layers, you can really pull off what is a cooler looking effect with a darker skinned, heroic Demigod of Apollo. Alright, taking a look at the armor, it's pretty much the same story with the skin. I started off with an idea, for instance, with Apollo, bright armor, thinking it is the god of many things, Apollo. That's a better name, actually. Apollo, the god of many things. No, seriously, depending on the story, Apollo is kind of the god of many things. A lot of people know him, of course, for the sun, which makes sense in many ways. But however, he is also seen to be the god of archery and music and dance, healing, prophecy, truth, and in some instances, the god of those who find themselves upon the streets of the world. Kind of like my dog Apollo, who was found on the streets of West Virginia. Figured, oh, bright. You want something bright and bold for the armor. So I did that. I started off with a bright gold. And I didn't like it. It looked to the point of gaudy. To the point of kind of disgusting and not good. So, yeah, decided, once again, we need to change this. And the first thing I had was, well, why not put some wash on it? Because one of the things you can do with gold armor, or just gold in general, is use a darker wash, such as a sepia or maybe even a brown wash over top of the gold area. And that can really tone it down. Browns actually go relatively well with gold. So I tried a coat of wash, and it kind of darkened it down to kind of where I wanted it to. So I put a second coat of wash, then a third coat of wash, and then I put a lot of wash on here, realizing I should have just painted the damn thing lighter to begin with and not as bright. So what I ended up doing with the armor is slowly becoming my favorite gold armor recipe, a mixture of Tinny Tin and Glorious Gold. These are two Vallejo game color paints. Mixing them two together in about a 50-50 ratio, get a nice darkened, almost bronzy-ish looking gold. Regardless, I just love the color of it and slopped out all over the painted areas of the model. Now, after the base coat of the paint mixture dried for the armor, I just went back in with some thin Glorious Gold and highlighted my way up from there, using more and more Glorious Gold, and then eventually adding in a little bit of silver. Silver can actually help really brighten up your gold. Add a little bit there, and a few small little highlights of pure silver on some of the edges to finish up the armor. And I'm very happy with how it turned out in the end. It doesn't take away too much from other areas in the miniature, but I'm happy with how the armor turned out, and realizing that, yeah, more and more coats of wash and waiting for it to dry in between just wasn't worth my time, because it would just take too long. Just repaint it the same way you did with the skin. And coming up next, same thing I did with the cloth. I ended up just repainting it. So just like the goddess Athena, Apollo also has a very interesting story about his birth. So in this story, and which is very similar to other stories, Apollo is the son of the gods Zeus and Leto. Now, Hera, Zeus's actual wife at the time, was very upset with Leto because Zeus had this child, or was the father of yet another child, even though that Zeus is married to her. And in fear of the wrath of Hera, Leto left Olympus and tried to find another place that could be suitable for her to give birth to Apollo. Now, the problem is the lands of Greece. This could be the physical land itself or the people of the land. Not really sure. It kept turning her away because no one really wanted to allow her in, not because she was a goddess and afraid of her, but nobody wanted to get the wrath of Hera because, again, she was very upset. Now, eventually, Leto stumbled upon the small island of Delos out in the Aegean Sea. Now, Delos may or may not have also been a cloud or a person previously before becoming an island. The jury's still out on which one's which. But that's not important right now. Leto made a deal or made a agreement of some sorts with rather the island itself or the people of Delos. Again, not really sure which one, to allow her to give birth there, and then that the god who would come forth, named Apollo, would bless the island with great riches. And the island or the people agreed. And now she finally had a place to give birth. Then now is the time for all the other goddesses from Olympus to come down and assist. They didn't want to help until now, but that's fine. Everyone except for Hera. See, Hera was still very upset about all this and actually played a trick on the goddess of childbirth. Yeah, the goddess of childbirth, her name's Alethea. She was tricked to stay behind on Olympus, so Leto was finally ready to give birth, but she stayed in labor for like 9 days and nights, just continuous labor pains because the goddess of childbirth just wasn't there. Now, some of the other goddesses, I believe Athena, and also Maybe a few others had like a jewelry exchange, and in doing so actually convinced Alethea, okay, it was fine to actually leave Olympus and come down to the island of Delos so that Leto can give birth. And as soon as she stepped upon the island, Apollo leapt from the womb of Leto and was like ready to go. Immediately afterwards, he was fed the food of the gods, nectar and ambrosia, and then turned and spoke to all that was present and said that he would become a master of the lyre, he'd become a master of archery, and that he would speak the will in the words of Zeus to the people. He started to walk around the island, which began covered and enriched with gold and treasures, now that Apollo was there. Speaking of the cloth, let's get on to that next. So for the cloth, I wanted to also redo it. Taking a look at the rest of the model, the armor and the skin, I figured it was probably best to spice this up as well. I mean, I put so much time into everything else, I might as well take a look at this as well. The initial base coat I used was just a simple red, and then I highlighted up to a, well, kind of to an orange. It doesn't look too good. But I decided to start it over. Since I wanted the cloth to be bright as well, I just started with a brighter base coat. In this instance, I chose orange red from Pro Acryl. And after a good solid base coat was down, I simply then added more orange to the orange red, and then simply orange, and then a little bit of yellow. This slow build-up of these three colors did take a bunch of time. It was very similar to the skin in that regard. When it comes to oranges and yellows, sometimes the transparency is a bit high and the opacity is a bit low, and they could be a little bit finicky. So in order to get really nice transitions and to not have these weird coffee stains, took a long time and a good number of coats of both the orange and the yellow built up. I mean, even though it did take a little bit of time, I'm still very happy with the result. This fiery orange that I have for the cloth on Demigod of Apollo turned out great. I love it, and I'm glad I went back and redid this aspect of the model as well. It really started to fit this kind of theme and story of the model of you're gonna have to learn it's okay to repaint things. So for the leather on this model, I kept it very, very simple. You're going to see this a lot. The more videos that I do, you'll see that I have a very standard, basic way that I like to do leather. These are all scale 75 paints, and I just fell in love with the leather effect that comes out with this combination. Starting off with ironically enough, leather brown base coat on the different leather areas. You might notice that I completely miss and avoid the chest strap with runes, the strap that also holds up his lyre. Don't worry, I don't forget about it. I just forget about it for a while. Slowly, just again, starting off with a leather brown base coat, letting that dry, mixing in a little bit of orange leather, and doing some simple highlights, and then a tiny little bit of off-white into that orange leather mix to give me some highlights, or some brightest highlights. The sandal's relatively simple. There's not too much leather on here, and it's mostly about the skin, as, you know, all of our demigod's rippling muscles. So I'm happy with how it turned out. It kind of blends into the skin a little bit much, though. And while I'm happy with it, part of me thinks it might have been a little bit better if I would have done something different. Maybe if the leather sandals and the straps stood out a little bit more. So I'm still kind of glad with it, even though I still kind of question what would happen if I did something differently. Maybe someday I'll paint another demigod of Apollo and we'll find out. So, of course, Apollo is known for his music and playing the lyre. It's unsure if Apollo made the lyre, if it was a gift from Nike, Winged Victory, or if it was a gift from Hermes or another god. Regardless, Apollo was really into music and was very good at it. One day, Pan, challenged Apollo to a musical contest to see who could play better. The funny thing is, the pipes that Pan had were actually cursed by Athena at the time, but that's a whole different story altogether. But anyway, Pan and Apollo had this musical contest to see who was better, and everyone present, which also included several other goddesses such as Hera and Artemis and the Muses, all of which were judges in this, most of which were also lovers of Apollo at the time, all, ironically enough, voted for Apollo to win. And Pan accepted his defeat. He realized that actually the god of music was better than him, but a follower of Pan, Midas, yes, that Midas, the Golden Touch Midas, Yeah, he actually lost his powers or gave his powers up by the help of Dionysus, but again, that's another story altogether. The point is, Midas didn't agree and thought that maybe there was a chance Pan could have been better, and Apollo got really, really mad at this insult of assuming that somebody was better at him than music, and gave Midas the ears of a donkey as punishment. Just seemed like a reasonable thing to do. All right, now on for the plume. I understand that, again, kind of like the Athena model, the plume can be considered part of the helmet and the armor, but I separated them here because I did something different. I started off with just a dark red base coat. This is very similar to what I did with the cloth. Part of it just to get a base coat on the mini, and part of it because I thought this is what I wanted to do originally. But with many other things, this model, things change. More specifically, I figured why not make this plume look like it's on fire? You know, we're dealing with Apollo after all, so why not? So again, recoated it with a off-white. Started off nice and bright, and then did effectively relatively simple flames. Do simple flames, you start off again with a bright base coat. White always works very well, or works the best, or an off-white. Then I used some yellow to give it this, the start of the flame. And if you think about it, you might say, oh, it should be the other way around, like the cloth. Flame, when drawing flames, start off with your yellow, and then add in your orange, and then add in your red. This is similar to if you look at flames in a fireplace, or if you have a campfire, or anywhere else you would find fire. That idea of going from the light of the yellow up to the darker's red really actually pulls off a cool looking effect. And I did that all the way down the plume and into the... It's not really a ponytail, but we'll call it that. The ponytail of Apollo. And the same idea of the deepest recesses, normally you will want to shade them, but I'd flip it around. Deepest recesses are yellow with some orange and red on top of that. Of course, a little bit of black on the top. Burnt edges, burnt parts of whatever material might be there, and just to show that it is the cooler areas of the flame, even though it's still relatively hot. But it gives a nice fire effect, going from that yellow up to a red. So for the base, I wanted to be better than what I did before. And better when I did before, I mean the previous I painted the thing when we did the Demigod of Apollo, Demigod of Athena. See, they all begin with the letter A. They got Athena, Ares, Apollo. We have an Amazon. I have a dog named Apollo, and the previous dog is named Ares. Everything begins in the letter A, and it's blah, 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 blah. I wanted to do better than I did with the Athena model and do a better base with the Apollo model. So what I ended up doing was something simple and reminiscent of early 90s Warhammer figures. A simple green base, a little bit of dry brushing, and added on some rocks, some tufts, piece of cake. Simple to the point. Didn't want to overdo it, didn't want to underdo it, and definitely didn't want to start making a brown slop that I did before. Pretty happy with it. I probably could have used another level of dry brushing on this to kind of bring out grass a little bit more, but I cannot complain with the rocks, the tufts, and how the base turned out. Kept it simple, and sometimes simple is the best way to do. Sometimes simple is the best way to do things. And there we have it. The Demigod of Apollo is complete. I am super, super happy with how this turned out. Took a few, odd twists and turns. Learned a little bit about patience. Definitely about redoing things. Definitely also accepting that it's okay to redo things, and you don't really have much time lost if it turns out better. It's now just time working on the miniature and learning a little bit more, again, about a different shade or different skin tone that I haven't really worked with. And going and doing flames and doing, this fire-looking, cloth. Things that I haven't really worked on before. And I'm very happy with how it turned out, and playing again, just like with every miniature, taking these skills and using them again in the future. And there we go, another miniature completed. I painted yet another thing, and I learned more things about the thing as I painted the thing. What do you think? Did I make a good decision in repainting most of this model? Did I waste my time? How about you? Did you do the same thing? Have you ever repainted a model that you realize this isn't working out? Did it turn out better? Did it turn out worse? Did you even finish it? Let me know down below. I'm curious about everyone else's experiences with similar ideas and miniatures that give them issues. Thanks again for watching. Apollo really appreciates it. This is Mediocre Minis, and may the divine light your path.